My hubby said I couldn't compare to her during sex. Then I laid a trap that destroyed him.
I had been careful all evening. He warmed my hand and smiled. The lights were low.
We were close.
He sighed and let out a small laugh.
He said, "You'll never be like her." The words fell through the room. My heart stopped. I felt cold, and time slowed.
I swallowed and kept my voice low.
I said, "Good. I never wanted to be."
He blinked and then laughed as if it was a joke.
The music kept playing.
I let him think he won the night. I let him sleep with his chest rising and falling. I lay awake and watched him. I counted his breaths like a rhythm. I thought of every small lie he had told me. I thought of moments I had ignored. I held my hand to my mouth and breathed slow. My eyes changed from hurt to a hard focus. I started to plan. He pretended it was a joke the next morning. He brushed his hair and kissed my cheek. I smiled and said everything was fine. He left for work with his usual words. I stayed and replayed that small sentence he had said. I let the words roll in my head like stones. I opened old messages and lists of small lies. I found the nights he said he worked late when he did not. I found hidden receipts and small hotel bookings. I listened to my own voice memos where I had asked him questions and he had turned them away. Pain changed into cold thinking. I felt a new weight. I told myself I would not break. I would not beg for love tied to his pride. My heart hardened like frost. My eyes focused on facts and documents. I decided to wait and gather everything. I would not act in anger. I would act with care.
I opened my private laptop and clicked the folder named Insurance. Inside were 6 months of proof. I found screenshots, voice notes, bank records, and photos. I had saved every small piece of his lies. I listened to a shaky voice memo where he had said another woman's name like it was nothing. I read texts where he promised meetings and then sent receipts for rooms. I watched a video from a hotel hallway with 2 cups and a checked bag. I had marked dates when he said he was late for work but stayed at that hotel. I had copies of his credit card charges and plane tickets. I made notes in a clean file named Hub Him. I whispered to myself, "You think I'm just realizing? You're already caught." I closed the laptop and felt calm. I felt in control like the room had a steady floor. Months earlier, I had stood in the kitchen and heard his voice through the thin door. He was on a call about a deal. He whispered a name like a secret. Mara. My hands went cold. I did not rush in. I let the call keep going. He smiled and said soft things. After he hung up, he told me it was all work. I believed him at first. Then small things made me doubt. A charge on his card. A hotel key in his coat. Perfume on his shirt. I started to record. I bought a small voice recorder and left it on a shelf. I saved a call where he said, "She pushed for the terms." I saved a photo of 2 plates and a bill at a seaside place. I watched his patterns and dated them. I learned Mara was not a client but an investor. I kept my quiet and my files. I was waiting. He had always said Mara was only a partner. He said she helped with numbers and that was that. But the files told another story. I found photos of them at the same beach he had told me was a work retreat. He had sent me a message saying he was in a board meeting on those dates. I had saved the hotel bill with both their names. I found a photo of Mara with his arm around her shoulder. I saved a receipt where he bought 2 breakfasts. I remembered the day I had sent flowers to that hotel to surprise him for his birthday. I had left a note on the card and the desk clerk told me they brought it to the room for Mr. H. I smiled then. And then I did not. The proof was clear. He had lied and I had the proof. I closed the folder slowly. If this looks right, I will continue with chapters 6 to 10 in the same format. Would you like me to proceed? I smiled at him every morning and pretended to adore him. Inside, I moved like a spy. I had a hidden account under my maiden name. I moved our company shares there. I had told him about a tax form and he had signed thinking nothing of it. He did not read the fine lines. He trusted me with numbers and he signed a paper in my hand. I made sure the transfer looked dull and routine. I used my signature style he had once praised. I watched the account grow safe for months. At night I checked the ledger and felt calm. I kept secrets like seeds and waited for the right season. Each day I kept my face and my hands warm. He never saw the transfer until I was ready. He walked around proud, thinking he still had control. He did not know I had already taken the first stone from his house.
At dinner he smiled and said my dress was pretty.
Then he added, she wore something like that once.
The room went quiet inside me.
I ate slowly and kept my face soft.
He laughed and told a small story about a party she had attended.
I said, you seem to remember her well.
He did not see the knife in my calm. I let him keep talking. I let him think his words did not burn me. I watched his gestures and saved each one in my memory file. Later I wrote the story down with times and dates. I did not shout or cry. I kept my voice low and my steps slow. I learned to make small things look like dust. He gave me pieces of the past without asking. I stored them. His pride made him generous with his past. I planned to use every small slice he gave me. I wrote an email that night and did not put my name. I told someone called Mara that I had proof of bad deals. I wrote I was a whistleblower and I attached files. I did not say who I was. I let the note sound like it came from a stranger. Mara answered fast. Her first reply had fear and a question. She wanted to know what I knew and what I wanted. I told her I wanted to protect other people and that she must be careful. I did not tell her I was his wife. I sent only details and dates. I watched from the kitchen as she left a long message on his phone that night. He listened and gave answers that made my blood freeze. The next day she called him to fix it. The email made them both move quickly. I smiled because my quiet had begun to work. I reached out to 3 women linked to him. One was a past assistant who had quit after being gaslit. Another had been called a mentee and then left after he promised mentorship and took credit. The third had loaned him money and never received it back. They each wrote a note with dates and facts. I sent them copies of my folder.
I asked them to help for truth, not hate.
They agreed slowly and then with heat.
We met quietly in a small cafe with phones. Each woman told stories that made my skin crawl.
She showed screenshots of late texts. He had written that he loved her ideas and would help build her.
Another shared bank statements. I watched them count the wounds.
They agreed to help me bring him down. We kept our faces calm. I felt less alone. We were a small army with the same hurt and aim.
One night he bragged loud over dinner and said he was untouchable. He leaned back and smiled, wine in hand. He said, you wouldn't survive without me. The room spun a little. I kept my fork steady and breathed slow. I looked him straight and whispered, that's what the others said. His smile thinned. He tried to laugh it off and called me dramatic. I kept my face like stone. He did not know we had a whole list of small betrayals filed away. He did not know we had a plan that fit like a net. I watched him grow small as the night wore on. He told a story about how he made deals and who he had helped. I nodded and listened, my hands folded on my lap. I let him feel big and safe. Then I went home and wrote every word he said into my notes. The net tightened a little more. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. My friend Lila was a lawyer. She met me in a small office with bright lights and glass walls. I showed her my folder. She flipped through each page, each screenshot, each date. She smiled a slow, sharp smile. She said, Annabelle, you have enough to end him legally, financially, and socially. My hands warmed at her words. She pointed to spots where he lied on forms and broke rules and deals. She circled a message he sent that showed pressure on a worker. I watched her turn the pages with calm force. She told me not to rush. She said men like him fall harder when they feel safe first. I nodded. I wanted him to feel strong, to relax, to brag. Then I would strike. She printed a plan on clean paper. I folded it and put it in my bag. I walked out knowing the road ahead was set. The charity gala was a large night full of lights and loud voices. I wore a dark dress and kept my head high. He walked beside me, proud of his suit and his fame. Cameras flashed as we entered the hall. He held my hand and squeezed it like he owned it. Then he stood on stage and thanked sponsors. He raised his glass and praised Mara. He said, "She is the woman who made it all possible." The crowd clapped. I smiled calmly. A camera caught that smile. It was not hurt. It was something colder. He did not see the chill in my eyes. He kept talking, proud of his lie. I watched the faces in the room and stored every detail. My heart stayed still. I knew a day would come when this moment would return to him like a storm. I stood there glowing on the outside, planning inside. Late that night, I sent him a message. It looked like it was for someone else. It held a photo of a document labeled Divorce Terms Plus Evidence. I wrote nothing else. Seconds later, he stormed into the room. His eyes were wild. He asked who I sent it to. I said, "Sorry, wrong person." His face tightened. He asked again what the document meant. I shrugged. I told him if he was worried, maybe he had something to hide. His breath grew fast. He pushed his hair back and looked at his phone over and over. He asked if I had spoken to anyone. I asked why that mattered. His hands shook. I watched carefully and kept my voice soft. He searched my bag and then stopped. He walked out without a word. I heard the front door slam. I knew exactly who he was calling next. The trap tightened quietly. I sat on the couch and waited. I knew where he went. He always drove to the same spot when he needed privacy. I imagined him dialing Mara with shaking fingers. I imagined him begging her to stay calm. I poured myself tea and held it warm in my hands. When he returned hours later, he smelled like cold air and fear. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Then he punched the wall so hard the frame shook. I stayed quiet. He asked if I was planning something. I asked why he thought that. He rubbed his face and said people were trying to ruin him. I said maybe he had done that himself. He growled and left the room. I wrote everything in my notes and kept my focus. My heart no longer broke. It only counted steps. Each one pulled him closer to the fall. That night, he left again. I followed later with a private investigator I had hired days before. We parked far enough to watch without being seen. His car sat outside a coffee shop. Minutes later, Mara arrived. She walked fast with her coat tight around her shoulders. He stood and hugged her like he needed air. They talked close, too close for business. Then they kissed. The investigator clicked a photo, right as their lips met. Another when he held her waist. Another when he wiped her tears. I sat still in the dark car. I felt nothing. Not pain. Not anger. Only a clean quiet. The kind that comes before action. I watched them walk inside together. The investigator handed me the camera. I placed the photos in my folder under a new name. Him. They were the final piece I needed. The final truth. The final key. I sat on my bed the next morning and looked through every photo from the night before. His hands on her waist. Her face close to his. Their kiss under a streetlight. I placed each photo in a new file named him. Then I added financial records and call logs that showed he shared private company details with her. It was all there, dates, times, patterns. He had told her things only leaders should know. He had used his pride to impress her. My heart beat steady as I lined the files up like puzzle pieces. I whispered to myself, now I have it all. I saved copies on 3 drives. I placed one in a box at my lawyer's office. I held the last one in my hand and smiled softly. The truth was complete. The trap was finished. All I needed now was the right moment to begin. I woke up early the next day. I made him breakfast just the way he liked. Eggs soft, toast warm, coffee sweet. He walked in surprised. I kissed his cheek and wished him a good day. He relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He smiled like everything was normal. He did not know I had seen him with her. He did not know I held every piece of proof. I packed his lunch and even fixed his tie. I touched his arm and said, "Enjoy your perfect day." He left happier than he had been all week. I watched him drive away and felt the ground settle under me. I cleaned the table slowly. I checked the files again and sent one quiet message to the board. My hands did not shake. My heart stayed calm. I had learned patience. I had learned silence. Today was the last day he would feel safe. At noon, I sat in my office and watched the clock. Then I pressed send. The entire executive board received an email marked urgent. Inside were photos, documents, and chat logs. The proof spread across every screen like spilled light. I leaned back and breathed out slowly. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A director asked me if I knew what was happening. I said I was sure they would handle it. By sunset, an emergency meeting was set. He had no idea. I imagined him sitting in his office, still proud, still certain the world bowed to him. I pictured the moment he opened the first file. The moment his face fell. The moment he realized someone had outsmarted him. I did not smile. I simply waited. The building felt quiet. My chair felt steady. The first crack in his empire had opened. And he did not even hear it yet. My phone rang around 5. His name flashed across the screen. I answered with a soft hello. He sounded out of breath. Papers moved behind him. People shouted in the distance. He asked me if I had seen anything strange. He said someone was trying to destroy him. He asked if I knew anything at all. I let a small pause fall between us. Then I said, "Maybe you already did that yourself." He yelled my name, demanding answers. I told him I was busy and hung up. I placed my phone face down. I felt a strange peace float over me. He was only feeling the beginning. The storm had not even reached full strength. My hands rested on my lap. My breathing stayed slow. I had waited months for this moment. And it had finally begun. His voice, once loud and proud, now shook like glass ready to break.
He came home late that night.
His steps were quick and sharp. He called my name before he even saw me. I sat at the table with Lila, my lawyer, beside me. Her files were spread out neatly. He froze when he saw her. He asked what she was doing in our home. Lila said she needed him to sign a simple form. His face went pale. I slid a stack of papers toward him. I said, "Actually, yes. Something strange did happen today." He looked through the papers fast, his hands shaking. He asked if I was behind emails. I said nothing. Silence was my answer. Lila asked if he wanted a moment to breathe. He yelled no. He paced the room. I watched him fall apart piece by piece. The man who once bragged he was untouchable stood there unable to speak. And I stayed calm. The war had truly begun. The next morning I asked him to sit. My voice was calm, almost gentle. I slid the divorce papers across the table. His name went white. He whispered, "No, this can't be real." I said nothing. Then I added the signed admission from Mara, the one where she confirmed their affair. His eyes moved fast over the page. He asked when I got it. I said, "While you were busy." His hands shook as he tried to grab more papers. He said she lied. He said I misunderstood. But the dates were there. The photos were there. The messages were there. I watched him realize he was trapped from all sides. He asked if we could talk alone. Lila said no. He asked if I wanted money. I said I already had it. His voice cracked as he begged me to slow down. I stayed still. The cage was closing, and he felt it. His phone buzzed over and over. I didn't look, but I knew the sound. Mara. When he finally answered, she cried so loud I heard every word. She said the board found out. She said they questioned her for hours. She begged him to fix it. He shouted that she ruined everything. She shouted back that he promised her safety. He stood, pacing, pulling his hair. I watched without moving. He called her again and again, but she stopped picking up. He slammed his phone on the table. He said I caused this. I told him he caused this long before I ever acted. He said he could save his job if I helped him. I said no. He said marriage meant loyalty. I asked him where his loyalty was the night he kissed her behind the coffee shop. He froze. The truth cut deeper than any document. His empire shook and he knew it. By noon, the news hit every site. His face flashed on the TV. CEO accused of misconduct, insider leaks, and secret affair with investor. I watched while stirring my tea. Reporters listed the evidence in calm voices. They spoke of dates, deals, and private leaks. They said the board demanded answers. They said the company might fall. I lifted my cup and took a slow sip. The anchor said he refused to comment. They showed a photo of him walking into the building with his head down. They played a clip of the board chair saying they would review leadership options. I placed my cup down and let the heat fill my fingers. The same man who once said I could not compare now stood in front of the world, broken. The quiet in my house felt warm. Not joyful, just right. Truth had stepped into the light, and I let it shine. The board asked to meet with me to confirm the facts. I brought my files, each one neatly marked. They asked if I sent the emails. I told them no. I showed them time-stamped proof that I was in another location. They checked the records twice. Each piece cleared my name. They thanked me for helping. They apologized for the stress. They said they knew I had been treated poorly. I nodded but said little. I let them speak in circles about trust and leadership. I let them realize he had used his role to impress women. They whispered to each other while I sat still. When they finished, they asked if I would support the company during the investigation. I said yes. They shook my hand. As I left the room, I saw another headline appear on a phone screen. Annabelle Cooper cooperates with board, not linked to leaks. Perfect timing. This was the moment my revenge truly began. During the next emergency board meeting, I sat at the long table across from them. His chair was empty. They argued about leadership, money, and trust. Finally, someone said, "We need someone steady to guide us." I waited. Another person spoke. Annabelle already understands the structure. Silence followed. Then a vote started. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. Every hand in the room lifted. The motion passed. They asked me to step in as temporary leader while he was investigated. I nodded and folded my hands. Inside, a spark lit. The company he said I couldn't understand, the world he claimed I didn't belong in, was now in my hands. I walked out of that room slow and calm. My heart was steady. My steps were light. I whispered to myself, he thought I was small. Now he will watch me rise. The crash came fast. By morning, investigators froze his accounts. They questioned every transfer he ever made. His name was removed from 3 key projects. Phones rang across the whole building. People whispered in corners. By noon, the investor firm connected to Mara withdrew their funding. It was written in one sharp line. We can no longer continue our partnership. His empire dropped $50 million in a single day. I watched the numbers fall on the big screen in the boardroom. Men who once laughed at me now gripped their pens like they feared the floor might open. I stayed calm and wrote notes in a clean blue notebook. One director leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for stepping in." I nodded. Inside, something warm began to rise, slow and controlled. He had said I couldn't compare, but now he couldn't even keep his own world standing. And I wasn't finished. That night, he received a message from my lawyer. The subject line was simple: marital redistribution begins. He opened the attached file. It showed the contract he once signed without reading, the one he thought was a tax form, the one that transferred most of his company shares into my name. I pictured him sitting on the floor, staring at the page, seeing his own signature at the bottom. He called me 6 times. I didn't answer. He called Lila. She didn't answer either. Then he sent a long message saying I tricked him. I saved it. He forgot I learned his tricks from watching him. He forgot the truth. He signed because he trusted my silence. I let him sit in the dark with that truth. He had mocked me, compared me, laughed at me. Now, he had signed away the very thing he thought made him powerful. The fall had only begun. Mara broke first. She sent him a long text saying she would not testify for him. She said the board questioned her again. They found traces of private company notes in her email. She said she could not risk her future for him. The message was full of fear. I almost felt pity. Almost. Reporters named her the mistress who sold him out. Her firm cut ties. She moved her accounts quietly, but people still talked. He tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. He threw his phone and shouted my name like I had taken the sun from him. I stayed silent. I kept working, signing new papers with confidence he never expected from me. The walls around him closed in fast. First the company, then the money, then the mistress, all leaving him alone in the shadow he built. He tried reaching for me again. This time, I never turned back. A week later, the The media asked for an interview. I said yes. I wore a simple white suit and sat under bright lights. The reporter asked about my divorce. She asked about the fall of his company. She asked if I had anything to say to women who felt small in their relationships. I smiled and said, "When someone tells you you're not enough, believe them and move on without them." The clip played across every platform. People shared it again and again. His name trended with the tag, #NotEnough. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Truth moved on its own. Later that night, I watched the interview replay. I saw myself calm, clear, steady. Not broken. Not weak. My phone buzzed with messages from women thanking me. I held the screen to my chest. He once said I couldn't compare. Now the world compared me to no one. The final shift came fast. My lawyer filed the papers for asset transfer. With the old contract he signed, I now owned 51% of the company. The board called an early meeting. They voted again, this time to make me permanent chair. The same men who once spoke to me like I was quiet air now stood when I entered the room. They called me Madam Chair. I sat at the head of the long table. My hands rested on the polished wood. I thought of him sitting there once, proud and loud. The room felt different with me inside it. Clearer, stronger. I signed the final paper that gave me full control. A director said, "This company is safer with you." I thanked him. Inside, something settled, a deep, steady peace. The girl he mocked in private had risen in public. And now no one could compete. He tried one last move. He filed a lawsuit claiming I invaded his privacy. He said I stole his files and tricked him. My legal team arrived with boxes of proof. Lila stood, calm and sharp. She showed the judge messages where he pressured workers, lied to investors, and compared me to another woman during fights.
She showed the contract he signed.
She showed evidence of his threats. She showed bank transfers that broke company rules. When his lawyer tried to argue, even he sounded unsure. The judge read silently for a long time. Then she said his claims had no ground. She dismissed his case and granted my counterclaim for damages. His lawyer took off his glasses and sighed. Then he quit right there in court. My ex sat on the bench alone, breathing hard. I walked out steady, holding the papers. Every step echoed. The fall was complete. He lost everything in 2 weeks. First the company, then the investors, then the public trust. Reporters stopped asking for his side. They said he refused to answer questions. He tried to post online, but every comment asked about the affair, the lies, the leaks. He changed his number twice. He sold his car. He moved into a small place far from the center of town. I saw a photo of him once, taken by a stranger. His hair was messy. His eyes were sunken. He looked like someone whose world had been taken apart piece by piece. He blamed me in messages he never sent. He blamed Mara. He blamed the board. But he never blamed himself. He thought he was untouchable, standing above me, above others. But he fell from his own height, not mine. I just showed the world the truth. And truth did the rest. I walked through our old house one last time. Sunlight touched the floor where we once danced. Dust floated in the air like soft ghosts. I touched the walls, remembering the woman I used to be, quiet, hopeful, forgiving. I walked into the bedroom. The sheets still held the faint scent of his cologne. I stared at the bed where he once compared me to her. My chest tightened, then relaxed. I opened the windows to let the air change. I took the sheets off the bed and carried them outside. I placed them in a fire pit he once built to impress guests. I lit a match. The flames grew, orange and hungry. The sheets curled and blackened. I watched quietly as the memory burned. I did not cry. The fire warmed my face. When it was done, I turned away. Chapter closed. Nothing left but ash and new space. My new life grew fast. I launched a brand focused on fair work, clear numbers, and women-led teams. People were tired of men like him. They wanted honesty. They wanted change. The name of my project was Compare No More. It made people smile. Investors reached out every day. Young workers wrote asking for jobs. I held meetings in bright rooms filled with plants and warm coffee. I taught them the things he tried to hide from me: how to read contracts, how to watch patterns, how to stay strong in rooms filled with loud voices. I watched them grow. I watched myself grow too. I no longer feared being small. I no longer feared any woman he compared me to. I had stepped into a new shape, one built from truth and fire. I had rebuilt not just a company, but myself. And this time, no one stood over me. My company held a launch gala. It was brighter than any night he ever took me to. Women in strong suits and men with calm smiles filled the hall. Reporters lined the stage. When they called my name, I walked forward steady and full. They honored me as one of the most powerful CEOs of the year. The screen behind me showed the headline: "The woman who couldn't compare, now in no one can compete." The room clapped. Some even stood. I held the award and felt its weight. I thought of the night he said I wasn't enough. I thought of the quiet tears I once shed. Those memories felt distant now, like shadows behind glass. I thanked the board, the team, and the women who helped me. I thanked my own courage most of all. When I stepped off the stage, I felt tall in a way I never had before. The night of the gala ended with soft music and warm lights. As I stepped outside to breathe the cool air, I saw a figure standing near the curb. Even from a distance, I knew it was him. His suit hung loose, his hair messy, his eyes tired. He whispered my name like it hurt to speak. "Annabelle, please. I need to talk." I kept walking. His hand lifted slightly, as if he wanted to reach for me, but no longer had the right. He said he was lost. He said everything was falling apart. He asked if I could just listen. I looked straight ahead and past him without a single word. The guards moved toward him, but he stepped back on his own. My heels clicked on the pavement like a drumbeat. For the first time, he understood. I owed him nothing. Not a glance. Not a pause. Not anymore. Days later, he sent one final letter. It was short, written in uneven lines. He said, "You won." No blame. No excuses. Just those 2 words. I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "No. I prepared." I placed the letter in the mailbox and let it go. After that, he disappeared from the public eye. No news. No posts. No more calls. It was as if his shadow had blown away with the wind. People asked about him sometimes, but I simply said I wished him healing. That was true. I did not need more chaos. I did not need more fire. My victory was not loud. It lived in calm mornings, clear thoughts, and my own strength. The war was over. The storm had passed. I breathed without weight on my chest. I felt the world open again, wide and bright, with no one telling me I was not enough. Months passed, my office filled with sunlight each morning, warm across my desk. My team worked with confidence now, laughing in hallways, building things with spark and heart. One quiet afternoon, my assistant knocked softly. She said, "Annabelle, you have a meeting with a new investor." I nodded and closed my journal. My chair felt sturdy beneath me. I walked into the meeting room ready for anything. My life no longer lived in fear. No tremble. No doubt. I sat straight, calm, proud of the world I had rebuilt. When the door opened, I felt something shift. The future, once foggy, felt clear. I was not the same woman who once cried in a dark room over a cruel line whispered in the night. I was new, strong, steady, and now I was ready to meet whatever waited on the other side of that door. The new investor stepped into the room with a confident smile. I knew her face. She was one of the women he once mocked during a deal, saying she would never make it far. She shook my hand firmly. "I've been following your work," she said. "Ready to build something unstoppable?" I felt a warm pride rise in me. I nodded. Let's show them what comparison can't measure. We went over plans, numbers, ideas. Our goals matched like puzzle pieces. She believed in fairness, truth, and bright futures. I watched her speak and saw a mirror of my own strength. We laughed at the same spots, planned fast, dreamed big. When she left, I realized something rare had happened. I wasn't rebuilding alone. I was building with women who refused to be small. Together, we were shaping a world no careless man could ever break again. That night, I wrote my final journal entry. I kept the light low and the room quiet. I wrote slowly, letting each word breathe. He said I couldn't compare to her. He was right. I wrote. I was never meant to. I was in a league of my own. I closed the journal and placed it on the shelf. I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought of every lie he told me, every scar he left, every moment he tried to make me feel less. Each one had become a brick in the trap I built, a trap he walked into willingly, not because I forced him, because he thought I was too weak to build anything at all. I smiled at the quiet night. My story was finished. My revenge was complete. And my life finally was mine. Please follow for more great stories. Thank you for watching.